All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Ephraim. Today's date is September 20th, 2022, and I'm saying Ahaya by Yeshim, Yeshua HaMashiach, Baruch Atah Adonai. And if you listen to the sound of my voice, you are blessed to see another day, and for that, all praise is due to the Most High God of Israel for now and forever. So, that being said, first let me apologize. My Real Talk Tuesdays, are normally, I try to have in the mornings. I started it actually yesterday evening, like I said, but I didn't get to finish it up until I got caught up a little bit today, so I apologize for it being a little late. But nonetheless, here we are with Real Talk Tuesdays back on track, and this is episode 7. All right, so welcome everyone, and I hope everyone is doing well. And you are blessed on this day, having a great and productive day. So I'm gonna do it a little different. I used to kind of, in the past, I would have like a sort of quasi news type format where I would report on different things in the news. But then I said, well, let me kind of slim that down some. So I'm going to try just speaking on one particular topic that I think is very interesting and relevant to this channel and the people that are supporters of it. So many of you may or may not know, but just recently the movie The Woman King came out, and ironically I did a presentation on what that movie is supposed to be about these female warriors from Dahomey back in the day. They were so-called Amazon warriors from the Dahomey village, or whatever the case may be, and their job was to protect the king and this and that. Well, they now have a movie about that, but here's the thing: the critics are screaming that they want the movie to be boycotted, and we're going to get into why exactly they want the movie to be boycotted. But I think as I normally do, I have to try to kind of provide some context to that, because many of us still don't know anything about this these female warriors from back then, a tribe of warriors allegedly, right? So, but there's some moving parts to go with that. And I know some of you may say, like, well, you can't please everybody. Someone always has something to say, whatever. And I mean, that's true to an extent. However, you have to kind of look at it in its totality. Is the critical thinking of that movie? Is it real? Is it imagined? Is it warranted? Things like that. So, I'm going to obviously give my take, and of course, you guys can comment in the comment section what you think. But I did a presentation on this sometime last year. I think it was in August or September. You guys can look that up. I did a presentation on this female clan of warriors from Dahomey. Now, the interesting thing is that the detractors of the movie are saying that here again, Hollywood is trying to quote unquote whitewash history, because the reality is Dahomey was actually they played a huge hand in the transatlantic slave trade. And some years ago, as a matter of fact, the leader, or I don't know if he's called a king now or whatever, but he came out and they actually apologized for their role in slavery. Well, obviously the movie doesn't deal with that aspect of it at all. It's like they deal with the kind of black pride aspect, bunch of females, warriors, and it sounds like a pretty good movie, because they projected the movie to do like 12 million, but I think it did like 19 million opening week. So the movie's doing well. But before I go on, let me just kind of give a little briefing on. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so the story goes that some critics want fans to boycott the film Woman King for whitewashing history. It says that Viola Davis, who's a great black actress, Highly anticipated film The Woman King premiered over the weekend, but while some fans praised the actress for her stellar on-screen performance, a few critics lit into the film for whitewashing the history behind some of the characters depicted in the action-packed flick. The historical film, which hits theaters on September 16th, tells the story of the Ajoji, the epic female warrior unit that protected the West African kingdom of Dahomey during the 17th to 19th centuries. Viola Davis plays the fierce warrior Nansika, who trains the next generation of warriors to fight back against their enemies. The film appears to celebrate the fearlessness and tenacity of the all-female military unit, but some history buffs weren't too pleased with the way the movie's director, Gina Prince Bythewood, which I'll get into her in a minute because knowing the author behind this is important. Gina Prince Bythewood downplayed the Dahomey's involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, the Dahomey and their all-female military regiment became notorious for capturing and selling African slaves to Europeans. Between 1851 and 1852, the British imposed a naval blockade of the ports of Dahomey, forcing the tribe to end the exportation of slaves from their bases. After the movie premiered on Friday, a few critics took to social media bashing the Woman King's production company, Sony, for, quote, attempting to rewrite history by leaving the harsh historical fact out of the film. Some naysayers urged viewers to boycott the action movie, like podcaster Antonio Moore, who called the historical epic the most offensive film to Black Americans in 40-50 years. And shout out to Madam Manoa for the article on that. So let's just kind of stop there real quick. So apparently the female behind that behind the movie allegedly downplayed Dahomey's role in the transatlantic slave trade. So it got me to thinking, who is this woman behind the film and what is her background? And why is that important, right? Well, it's important because it'll help give us some understanding as to maybe, you know, her approach and her mindset to approaching this film and why she filmed it the way that she did. Karis once said something many years ago that I hold true to this day. And it's like, you know, you have to know the history of the author of whatever it is you're reading or you're getting into. You have to know about the person who created that, right? Because it'll give you it should give you some insight into their mindset as to why they you know, arrived at the decisions they did and the opinions and how they dictated, you know, what we call art from their perspective, right? So anyway, her name is let's see here, let me bring it up. Her name is Gina Prince Bythewood. And immediately when you look at her, I mean, she looks racially ambiguous, right? I mean, clearly she looks mixed, but with us, you can't really always tell that. So anyway, I wanted to find out who this woman was behind this film. And it says Prince Bythewood was born in Los Angeles, California, and adopted by Bob Prince, a computer programmer, and Maria Prince, a nurse, when she was 3 weeks old. Her adoptive father is white, and her adoptive mother is of Salvadorian and German descent. She is Jewish. She grew up in the white middle-class neighborhood of Pacific Grove, California. She has 4 siblings through her adoptive family. In 1987, Prince Bythewood graduated from Pacific Grove High School. She attended UCLA's film school, where she also ran competitive track. At UCLA, she received the Jean Reynolds Scholarship for Directing and the Ray Stark Memorial Scholarship for Outstanding Undergraduates. She graduated in 1991. She sought out her birth mother around 2014, but it was not a positive experience. Her birth mother, who was white, was a teenager when she gave her up for adoption because her family knew her child would be multiracial and they wanted her to have an abortion. Okay. And I thought it was important to give a little, you know, bio on the woman behind the film because, listen, you know, whether we want to admit it or not, who and how we were raised has a lot to do with a lot of the mentality and the things that we hold today as adults. And I'm not trying to to say that because she's biracial and her parents, she basically grew up in a white household, grew up in a white neighborhood, that her thinking is not legitimate, or whatever case may be. But I'm saying it gives us a chance to kind of critically look at her background and see how is it that she got it so wrong with this film in terms of the Dahomey's role in the transatlantic slave trade, right? Because many of us know that a lot of the Israelites were sold into slavery. It wasn't other Africans. That's just false. It was the Africans were selling Israelites because they knew that they were different, from different tribes, different peoples, or whatever, different nations. So it was the Israelites that went into, mostly Israelites that went into slavery during the transatlantic slave trade. So how was it that she got it so wrong? And in fact, like I mentioned earlier, many years ago, the king, or the leader of Dahomey, issued an apology. Let me bring that up real quick. Okay, it goes on to say that Mathieu Karakou, the president of the West African nation of Benin, which is actually known as Dahomey back in the day at one point, caused a sensation in 1999 when he apologized to African American clergy for his country's role in the transatlantic slave trade. Ever since then, officials from Benin have been traveling to the United States to offer their regrets and seek reconciliation. Now that's coming directly from them. So again, I don't understand how she was able to why would she kind of downplay Dahomey's role just to be able to tell a good story? What she could have done was just say, hey, this story is loosely based on true events or something to that effect, but not make it like it's a movie about what actually happened, because that changes the whole dynamics and the expectations of people that look like us and what we expect from that, right? And so I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, as we say in the South. And she could have approached it a couple different ways, but not for her to kind of downplay the significance of Dahomey's role in the sale of black people. I think is she misses the mark. Like seriously, like misses the mark. And I'm just calling it for what it is. I don't know what's in her heart. I don't know why she would kind of downplay the role of Dahomey. Just to, like I said, the movie could have been, they could have said, or they could have even taken another approach and said, this movie is not based on anything of historical value or historical context, and that would have worked as well, right? So let me continue. Let me bring this on here. Let me bring this up real quick. Give me 1 second, and and that would have worked too. She could have done it like that. She could have approached it from that standpoint. Give me 1 second here, y'all. Okay, so yeah, it goes on to say that the officials from the West African nation Benin apologized during a ceremony for their country's role in once selling fellow Africans by the millions to white slave traders. The group is making several stops in Virginia and Washington, D.C. to publicize President Mathieu Karakou's recent apologies for his country's participation in the slave trade. Quote, "We cry for forgiveness and reconciliation," end quote, said Luke Janaja, Minister of Environment and Housing for Benin. Quote, "The slave trade is a shame and we do repent for it," end quote. Benin, a country of 4.7 million people, I'm pretty sure it's more than that now, was called Dahomey in the 17th century when it was a major supplier of slaves for white exporters shipping from what was called the Slave Coast. Some accounts say Dahomey rounded up more than 3 million people for sale to slave traders. Ganajata spoke Saturday at a James River dock where, before the Civil War, slaves were shipped into Richmond, unloaded, and marched across a bridge to downtown holding pens to await auction. And credit to the Chicago Tribune, where I got that piece of the story from. And so you all can kind of see, why some people would have an issue with the depiction of this film. It kind of reminds me of Roots. Many of us should be familiar, if not directly, about the movie Roots that came out back in the day. I remember I was like about 10 years old when Roots first came out, and Alex Haley was just, I mean, he got all kinds of awards, made all kinds of money off the movie Roots, telling the story of Kunta Kinte and this and that. I mean, it was a great movie. Only thing is, he plagiarized a lot of it, and he was sued for it, right? And he ended up settling the plagiarism lawsuit, because he did in fact take bits and pieces. I think the story he took bits and pieces of Roots from was called The African or something like that. And so I bring that up because I bring it up to make the point that Roots, while it may not have all been truthful or reality based, it made a great story, right? And I think, and so I'm kind of torn, right? Because I'm all for a good movie, whatever the case may be. But again, if the movie is based on history, you gotta make doubly sure that it's based on an accurate view of history and not his story, if you know what I'm saying, right? And so I'm a little torn, because my thing is, as a grown man, of course, I have a different view of Roots now as a 54, almost 55-year-old man than I did at 10 years old. And that movie, that it had a lot in it. Roots is a classic, okay? I know and I understand that it was not totally truthful. And like I said, they romanticize a lot of it. They romanticize our captivity, white folks coming into the jungles of Africa and capturing black. That just was not true. That just didn't happen, right? That's just Hollywood stuff. The bottom line is, they didn't even deal with the fact of Africans selling other black people into slavery. They didn't even deal with that. They made it seem like white people came into Africa and started capturing, snatching up black people and then putting them into slavery. No, that's not how it went. But my thing is, does it take away from the fact that it was still a good movie? No, it doesn't. It was a great movie. I mean, to this day, I love Roots, right? That's because I'm aware that that's not actually what happened. Now the problem is the people who aren't aware of what actually happened. Then we get into a thing where it's like, now they look at Roots and they think they have the historical context for what happened and how our people came into slavery. You see what I'm saying? So it's like it's kind of push pull. It's I see it from both sides, because not everyone is as aware as many of us are, or and so, in essence, the movie becomes their teacher, and so they're teaching them a bunch of false things. It just didn't happen. So quite naturally, there was a lot of pushback, and I can say rightfully so, because like I said, I can't speak to that young lady's what's in her heart, whatever the case may be. But clearly, I mean, she's a graduate of college, UCLA, and all that. She has to have known the true history and the significance of those so-called female warriors from Dahomey and their role, or Dahomey's role, in the transatlantic slave trade. She had to have known that, right? I mean, I'm assuming she's educated. She had to have known. So let me bring up one of the detractors here and what they had to say about it. And this is what a user by the name of the Reparationist Perspective, or TRPTV_1 on Twitter, had to say. And shout out to her. There's a female picture on it, so I'm assuming it's a female. But this is what she had to say about the movie. She said, if you are an American freedman, you need to boycott The Woman King. Holly Weird glorifying and whitewashing the truth of our ancestors being traded into slavery. Is the Jewish Holocaust ever fictionalized? I'm sorry, is the Jewish Holocaust ever fictionalized? And she put it a question mark. It says, our Holocaust is fictionalized to erase the truth of what was done to our ancestors. And again, that's how she feels, and that's end quote. That's how she feels. And I can't say that I blame her. I don't understand her feeling that way, because I mean, we're living in a time when, I mean, it's just, we live in those kinds of times. I mean, they're pushing back against being taught critical race theory in schools. They're talking about now being woke is a right talking point for conservatives. If you're woke, you're somehow you're Black Lives Matter and against everything, the government, or I don't know. It's just, we live in some crazy times, man. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I understand her frustration, or where that frustration is coming from. You know, again, I don't think, because the reason why this young lady, the Miss Bythewood, I'm sorry, what's her name? I don't want to disrespect and call her by the wrong name, but the reason why knowing about her history is so important is because there's a level of responsibility that goes. If you're a black person, there's a level of responsibility that goes along with, doing a movie like this, and you can't feign or pretend that you don't know the significance, or downplay the significance of the actual circumstances surrounding a movie like this if you're a black person. So I think it helps us understand, knowing her background, why she may have approached it the way that she did, because I can't see a person like myself or many of you doing a movie like this, knowing good and well that Dahomey had a huge hand in the transatlantic slave trade. They had a huge hand in enslaving other Africans, quote unquote, but we know that they were more than likely Israelites, because of the whole Dahomey thing. And we can go back into the whole I don't want to get too deep, but many of us are aware of that. Okay, I mean, just read the book if you haven't, From Babylon to Timbuktu, right? And it deals with that specifically and directly and in depth, right? Definitely recommended reading. So there has to be a level of responsibility when doing a movie like that. I mean, yeah, people can say, oh, but people always want to complain about something, whatever. But is it justified though? Right? Is she justified for feeling that way? Right? Like I said, I'm all for a good story or a good movie. If it's good and entertaining, hey, great. But they need to establish from the onset that, okay, this movie is not based on anything historical. This is a fictional based movie, and you just set the tone, right? Set the tone, and then so there's no real pushback. So that way, people may not like it, but at least by doing that, you set the tone that, okay, this is not historically based. Okay, this is just us being Hollywood, putting together a good movie, kind of based on something loosely, but it's not based on historically what happened with this group or this group of people. And then I think we have a different conversation now, a totally different understanding, right? So anyway, that's that. I wanted to speak on that and try to spark some dialogue on what many of you think about the Woman King, and again, I'm all for encouraging blacks to be strong and to be proud, but be proud for the right reasons, and be proud, and no more than anything, be aware of our history, the true history of us and our people, and how we got to where we are, and all those kinds of things. So I just thought it was important to kind of talk about and spark some dialogue on that. So you all write, tell me what you think in the comment section. Do you think this young lady who's behind the movie, do you think her intentions are pure, or do you think she's, she had a hidden agenda? I mean, just whatever you think and feel based off this presentation, but just be respectful, and let's talk about it. All right. So I hope you enjoyed my comeback for Real Talk Tuesdays, episode 7. Why some are seeking to boycott the movie Woman King. All right, so until next time, this is Dr. Ephraim signing off, saying Ahaya by Yeshua HaMashiach, Baruch Atah Adonai. Make sure you, if you're new to the channel, you subscribe and hit the notification bell. Every time I upload something new, you'll be notified. And until next time, Shalawam, elect.